Hello everyone and welcome back. Now that you're here, we can discuss today's topic. Can Reggie Star solo the Jujutsu Kaisen verse? In this video, we'll briefly go over Reggie's abilities, an example game plan to clear the verse, and notable techniques that could prove challenging for him to overcome. By the end of the video, I will have demonstrated just one example of Reggie's untapped potential, as you will soon learn that given the proper conditions, even the great, untouchable, honored one, Satoru Gojo himself, can be brought to his knees by the two most powerful forces available to humanity: cryptocurrency and nuclear bombs. Before we get to the game plan itself, it's important to establish Reggie's baseline arsenal. Besides having hand-to-hand capabilities roughly measuring up to a low-end grade 1 sorcerer, Reggie is known for his tactical intellect and innate cursed technique, namely Contractual Recreation. There are many examples of Reggie's tactical intellect that are evident straight from the character's introduction, that range from him being able to immediately recognize the strength of Megami's Shikigami, and then overwhelm him with numbers and strategic use of his allies' abilities, to his ability to look past the surface of the culling game and recognize Kenjaku's true objectives with impressive accuracy considering the available information. He was able to learn barrier techniques to counter domains, which have been consistently shown to be difficult to obtain and master. Later on in this battle against Megami, he misleads him by claiming that neither of them have big moves, and again is able to quickly learn and counter the unique properties of Megami's domain expansion. Circling back to Reggie's curse technique, Contractual Recreation, it allows him to recreate the objects or conditions of any contract. In Reggie's case, mainly receipts. However, it must be noted that it's never directly stated that Reggie has to have been the one to form these contracts. However, either interpretation will work in Reggie's favor for this discussion, as he's either able to make dozens of high-scale purchases in a matter of days, all within the constraints of the culling games, or he's able to use the contracts of others, both of which will lead him towards being very easily able to amass wealth in character, which will of course be the crux of his prep time. Reggie's technique can also replicate the benefits of services. The direct example we are given of this is the rest and relaxation of 3 days and 2 nights at a spa. This shows us that his contracts aren't strictly limited in terms of time or conditions in order to gain the benefits. For example, it should logically follow that if Reggie paid someone to bring him somewhere, such as a plane ticket or Uber ride, he should be able to burn said ticket to immediately travel there, as he wasn't required to do anything in order to receive the immediate benefits in the example we have been given. Finally, the last relevant detail of Reggie's technique for this discussion is his ability to command his summoned objects to act as Shikigami, having them fly through the air and attack in specific targeted fashion. Immediately after being commanded, these summoned objects will disappear once they've carried out the task, but as far as we've been shown, the objects will not disappear until a command is given. And this leads into the game plan for how Reggie could use a few years prep time to conquer the entire Jujutsu Kaisen verse. Now I'll begin to lay out Reggie's game plan to solo the verse. First, he'll need to acquire any amount of money. For the purpose of keeping calculations easy, let's say Reggie is able to acquire the equivalent of $10 USD. With these $10, all Reggie needs to do is purchase an item worth about $10 and duplicate it in order to make a profit. He can then spend his days buying progressively more expensive things, effectively exponentially increasing his money on a daily basis. Essentially, if Reggie can manage to buy an item worth his net worth and sell 2 copies of it every day for 10 years, he would make a numerically undefined amount of money, expressed by 10 times 2 to the power of 3,652.5. But even lowering the scale to 2 years worth of daily transactions would allow Reggie to amass $2,200,000,000,000, which easily matches the top 10 richest people in the world nearly twice over, and matches the economic power of entire nations like Canada or Italy, which rank in the top 10 GDP in the world and each make about 2% of all goods and services traded on Earth. Now, I know that the more skeptical viewers watching may question Reggie's ability to find and sell things that match his entire wealth when he can reach these ludicrous numbers. And the truth is, with Reggie's Jujutsu, he could easily partner with anyone and make an endless supply of anything. So it's entirely within the realm of possibility for him to summon brand new new private islands, or countries for dictators, or purchase and duplicate the entire US Army's equipment and weaponry so long as he was allied with them. So there are any number of ways that Reggie could benefit allies who operate on this scale of wealth. But for the sake of this video, let's say that Reggie invests in crypto. Within many countries throughout the world, including Japan, there are small automatic kiosks called Bitcoin ATMs, where you can exchange money to purchase small fractions of cryptocurrency, such as $10 worth, for instance. And when you do make these purchases, you are given the option to add these Bitcoin fractions to an existing crypto wallet or to print out a paper wallet, which is fundamentally identical to a receipt. We already know that Reggie is more than capable of recreating contracts that don't directly involve physical objects. So either way, this process results in Reggie quickly obtaining all Bitcoin in circulation by selling his Bitcoins and then using his contracts to reobtain them. Due to the law of supply and demand, the value of Bitcoins would naturally rise as Reggie slowly chewed through the world's supply, which is currently worth about $1.4 trillion according to my research. When you consider the other forms of crypto that Reggie could branch off into, that number rises to about 2.6 trillion. So with or without the proper market manipulation, Reggie could realistically reach the projected 2.2 trillion figure mentioned previously at a casual pace of 2 transactions per day in a matter of only 2 years. Clearly, this process involves many uncertain factors, and crypto specifically was mostly selected for entertainment purposes. It would be far easier and more in character for him to attempt to accomplish this with gold, for instance, due to his origins. My sources estimate that just the gold that has been harvested from the earth is currently worth about $18.2 trillion, and it would be far easier for Reggie to manipulate an economy based around not only a physical object, but also one that has an unknown limit, as there is a potentially unlimited amount of unclaimed gold in the world. So if you personally don't vibe with the Bitcoin angle, there's always other possibilities. Now that we've established how Reggie gained this money, all that's left is to use it to kill every single character in the Jujutsu Kaisen series. He can start this long journey by purchasing many flights to all around the world so that he could use his technique to jump to other countries at a moment's notice for protection purposes. Collecting a stockpile of medical and resting-based receipts will also be instrumental in his odds of handling unexpected battles. To round out his attack potency, Reggie can buy any number of houses, trucks, boats, or even the prior mentioned private islands that can reach about 120 miles in length, which is about 193 kilometers. With the extreme amount of wealth he has amassed, he can accomplish these high-scale purchases without placing any real strain on his financials due to his ability to simply sell them back to the owner at a slight loss and retain his ability to recreate them. Immediately, the vast majority of the Jujutsu Kaisen verse has already been defeated by this. Reggie could simply fly a plane over Japan and drop dozens or even hundreds of private islands from high enough for them to reach terminal velocity and very quickly destroy all life off the face of Japan, like a meteor swarm that wiped out the dinosaurs. But unfortunately, that won't really work on the trickier characters with more elusive or resilient curse techniques like Gojo. In order to truly topple the Jujutsu world and conquer the verse, Reggie must do what Toji and Kenjaku failed to do and kill the Honored One. In order to accomplish this, Reggie will take his newfound arsenal to Russia and other countries like the Czech Republic to purchase army surplus equipment and essentially outfit himself with hundreds or thousands of self-operating machine guns, RPGs, tanks, fighter jets, and attack helicopters. At this point, anything that Reggie cannot obtain with money, he can very easily obtain with force, especially when you consider that regular people can't even see Jujutsu in most cases. This equates to Reggie invading with an autonomous, invisible army, all while he has the ability to escape or heal himself from anything, when he already has incredible strength and durability by humanity's standard. Once he's satisfied with his newfound arsenal of plane tickets, medical bills, army equipment, and private islands, he then travels to North Korea and effortlessly dispatches their military and infiltrates their head of state. Using bribery, intimidation, or promises of protection from the Jujutsu world, very similar to Kenjaku during the Culling game, Reggie will convince or force Kim Jong-un's government to sell him their full stockpile of nuclear bombs, which basic research indicates ranges from 20 to over 100 warheads, hypothetically. In theory, Reggie could also attempt this with Russia, who has the most nukes in the world, but realistically, it should be far more easy for him to handle the North Korean military comfortably, with his private islands and Shikigami army relative to Russia's military, which is far more powerful. Then, in order to ensure his targets can't escape, Reggie would then have to refine and practice barrier techniques for the next 6 or 7 years until he could reliably negate teleportation outside of Japan, similarly to how Juzo was able to create a barrier that could physically block Gojo at the expense of allowing everyone else to pass through it effortlessly. After a couple months of setup, he could realistically cover Japan in an anti-teleportation barrier, but it is unlikely that he would even need it, given that the only sorcerers who could hypothetically survive the nuclear bombs in private islands carpet bombing Japan would be instantly blinded by the explosion's ionized radiation and extreme light, rendering even characters like Gojo incapable of seeing or possibly even properly using the Six Eyes due to its genetic and biological nature, rather than just being a jujutsu ability, as evidenced by Yuta's inability to copy it. We know that the Limitless technique operates on an atomic level thanks to the Six Eyes. Therefore, things like photons, which are smaller than even atoms, should be completely unaffected by Gojo's abilities. Even when lowballed, the stockpile of Kim Jong-un's 20 warheads are then duplicated to be 40 by Reggie's technique, half of which don't involve jujutsu and has the potential to spawn millions of vengeful curse spirits for any possible survivors of the blast to be attacked by. Now, of course, these 40 nukes would certainly be enough to destroy all life in Japan, including Gojo. Not necessarily from the impact or explosion, or possibly even the radiation itself if you want to highball Gojo's infinity and say that it can block even things like gamma rays. But he couldn't avoid death from lack of breathable air. Nuclear bombs can reach temperatures hotter than the 15 million degree core of the sun, spawning thermal radiation so intense that practically everything close to ground zero is vaporized. This extreme heat creates widespread fires that coalesce into a giant firestorm that burns through oxygen and populates the air with smoke and other toxins. This, coupled with the ionizing effect that the bomb would have on what little breathable air was left, and it would be simply impossible for anything that needs to breathe to survive in those conditions. Consider that about 100 nuclear warheads are theorized to be capable of global nuclear winter that would bring about the extinction of humanity and then localize all of those warheads to the comparatively tiny island nation of Japan. In this case, Gojo would have to survive at least a few hours without any breathable air at all, which would surely spell his death, even if he was completely unaffected by the heat, light, radiation, sound waves, and physical force of the many explosions. After this process, all Reggie would have to do is travel to Africa and kill Miguel, which should be easy due to his strategic mind and large island-level attacks. But of course, there are many techniques in Jujutsu Kaisen that could protect someone from many forms of damage and peril. So as the video winds down, we'll take some time to enter a lightning round and go over the most notable techniques and how they would be affected by this attack on Japan. First is the inverse technique, which is implied to have an upper and lower limit. This upper limit is stated to be below Gojo, or at least implied, during Shibuya. Therefore, the explosion would likely still affect him, and if not, the radiation doesn't do conventional damage that can be inverted. Ui Ui's teleportation. Currently, Ui Ui is the fastest travel speed character that we are aware of, and this reasoning will apply to Gojo as well. But given that it took 3 hours to get to Malaysia from Shibuya, it is unlikely to impossible that Ui Ui or Gojo could escape the country in one jump. And by extension, the dozens of nuclear bombs that could threaten a global nuclear winter. This logic applies to Nanako and Todo as well, as any other characters that might use teleportation that I'm not thinking of. Barrier techniques could hypothetically hypothetically block an explosion of this size in the right hands. Tengen was able to contain a black hole because it was completely inside the boundaries of his pure, empty barriers, which uniquely allow for god-tier barrier users to manipulate reality to a significant effect, at least when environmental factors are concerned. It should be noted that Tengen wasn't able to use these barriers to manage anything against Kenjaku directly, so their abilities should be considered limited in terms of combat. Given the fact that Reggie's attack would be external, it's unlikely that the same effects would be possible. And since we haven't been shown any examples of barrier techniques enduring attacks of this scale without the reality warping effects of the empty barriers, Tengen's barriers would likely shatter or allow the nukes to pass through them one by one until there was nothing left to protect them. And besides, it is highly likely that the same conditions that would kill Gojo would still apply to Tengen, even if his barriers endured the physical attacks. In the worst case, Reggie could personally pursue Tengen after the fallout cleared, assuming Tengen could survive the millions of vengeful cursed spirits. Mahito's idle transfiguration just might have the best chance of surviving this attack in my opinion, because it could stop the explosions from changing the shape of his soul, but due to their ability to harm Megumi's Shikigami and their status as Shikigami themselves, the nukes and islands created from Reggie's technique should be able to damage curses, and thus drain Mahito of his cursed energy. The amount of energy required to sustain his soul from dozens of town-level nuclear bombs and possibly even more attacks from terminal velocity private islands should likely exhaust and exercise him. In the case that somehow he survives, he would be in no condition to fight Reggie one-on-one, given his impressive arsenal. We know that Takaba's comedian technique is based on the user's confidence, and it would be in character for him to completely lose hope when his entire country explodes, devolving into nuclear winter, and there is no basis for arguing that Takaba's technique could manipulate reality on such a scope, especially considering that all of the most outlandish gags and reality warps of the Kenjaku fight were confirmed to be a dream when Kenjaku awakens to be attacked by Yuta. High attack potency moves like Jogo's Meteor, Yuki's Star Rage, and Geto or Kenjaku's Uzumaki, as well as Gojo's Hollow Purple and Sukuna's Fuga, all lack the AP, range, or AoE, or in most cases all three, to effectively protect from the islands and nukes, and none of these can handle the radiation. In the worst case scenario, Yuki could hypothetically become a black hole and cause a stalemate, but it is unlikely for her to do so in character. Haruta Shigemo's miracle technique treats individual attacks as miracles being expended, so at best he would be able to survive about 6 islands or nukes and their radiation. Even Higuruma's domain, where violence is forbidden, would simply have its barrier shatter, and then he would be crushed and burned to death near instantly. The same logic applies to practically every domain. Speaking of domains, Hakari would either instantly die before he could achieve a jackpot, or he would eventually be outlasted by the same climate, environmental factors that would kill Gojo. Angel and Uro's techniques cannot operate on a large enough scale to counter islands or the blast radius of nuclear bombs, and they cannot escape by fleeing into the air due to the attack coming from the air, and nukes optimally explode in the sky to best spread the radiation. In conclusion, there are dozens of ways that Reggie's economy-shattering technique could be leveraged to overpower even the greatest foes in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, which illustrates the unlimited power and potential of sorcery as a power system. Even someone who lost to Megumi could beat Gojo in the right conditions. But feel free to point out any flaws in my logic in the comments, and let me know if you expected Reggie to be capable of world domination. But until then, he'll become the world's greatest special grade sorcerer by using the power of capitalism. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the discussion and came away with some new ideas about the scale of the Jujutsu Kaisen verse and the terrifying power of money. But either way, I hope you stay safe and take it easy.